Priya Srinath, who caught up with Uday Kotak on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum at Davos, who believes that the macros are not out of shape for us and any fiscal diversion will not be material.
And I actually think the Prime Minister has hit the nail on the head. Long-term strength of a company comes from its trade and commerce.
You know, he also said, we must get into this together. So he's obviously saying we will do this together. There are factions, there are fault lines in the world, but let's bridge them together. But when he talks about reforming multilateral institutions, I remember interviewing Nirmala Sitharaman as the Commerce Minister, and then she said it is our time to look at developed nations in the eye. Are we being too ambitious there?
So I think we've also got to keep in mind the fact that India is very open, and in the bargain on the trade and commerce side, we continue to run current account deficits. And we were not able to match our books on current account even when oil was at 40. Therefore, at the current level of around 70, India will run a current account deficit of up to 2%. And for any nation, if it really wants to become a world power, we must be able to earn our way in terms of our competitiveness, which will give us exports. And that is one area which we really got to be clear about.
I will quickly take for a structural change that has happened in India, and that's IBC. Many people believe that has for good changed the relationship between Indian promoters and Indian banks. Some part of corporate India is obviously very polarized on that front because they believe this will lead to significant asset value depression and all of that. What is your take?
My view is it's a good thing because finally, if a debtor is not paying, there has to be a resolution. And the creditor has to move on and needs a solution. The creditor cannot be a zombie for a long time. And if you look at India, the banks post-2011 have effectively been in a sort of a zombie situation for many years. Time has come to purge, clean and move on. And the balance of power between the creditor and the debtor has to be fairly balanced. It was excessively in favor of the debtor. I think the balance has now come.
So two quick last questions, and one of them has to be on the Indian budget right around the corner. Do you expect this to be a big bang considering this is the last full year budget of the Modi government, or do you believe this will be a prudent, practical exercise with fiscal discipline?
My sense is even if there is a movement in the fiscal deficit, it will be marginal because I think the government also has other tools like the ONGC transaction and disinvestment to be able to ensure that the fiscal deficit does not go out of control. And therefore, I'm quite convinced that we will not see fiscal deficit out of control. And I think the government is also very clear that it's thinking medium to long term, and I think development of India requires economics and politics working close together.
So my last question really, some speculative reports about 100% FDI in banking, of course now being denied by officials, but if this were to be considered, and Kotak perhaps is the only private bank not entirely owned by foreign holding there, why have you red flagged it?
See, I think divide 100% FDI into two parts. One is if a foreign bank's Indian subsidiary wants to set up, I think that's different. But you can't have a situation of having Indian private sector banks 100% foreign owned. I think it's a contradiction in terms. And even this thing about diversified shareholding of foreign institutions, I think there are question marks and it does not necessarily work because most of these FIIs depend on two global proxy advisory firms. One is Glass Lewis and second is ISS.
That's right, yes.
And they vote whichever way these proxy advisory firms are. Therefore, even if the shareholding is diversified between different FIIs, the concentration of voting is with these two. And therefore, that's how the voting happens. So, we should not call ourselves...
We'll be importing too much volatility and too much uncertainty with that.
And we cannot call ourselves Indian banks by being majority foreign owned. That's all I'm saying.